Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode discussion for She-Hulk. I am Jade,
And I'm Josh.
and we're going to be getting into episode 6
Yeah.
of She-Hulk. So spoilers beyond this point, we're going to be talking about a lot of things that happened in this episode, and maybe even potentially what will happen in the future. Obviously, we don't know what will happen, but we're still going to talk about what might happen. So let's get it right into it. I feel like there was a lot of hints at things or little Marvel Easter eggs in some ways throughout this entire episode.
Yeah. I feel this episode felt a lot, it felt different than the other ones. This one felt a little more along the mainline Marvel formula
It
than
did.
the ones had. Everything before this kind of felt like it's been setting up. This is the first time I really felt like it was in the midst of a Marvel show.
I agree. I agree. And I feel like there was also a big shift from Jen. I mean, this whole time we've seen Jen kind of deny her Hulk side in a different way than Bruce did. Bruce did because Hulk was a danger. Jen did because she wanted her merits as herself to
Right.
outshine her She-Hulk persona. But we have that wedding, and she wants to show up as She-Hulk. Kind of shows that she really is actually embracing and feels more
Yeah.
confident in everything with the She-Hulk side of her.
Yeah, she's starting to like having that side of her that she can choose to display when she wants to have fun and be a little more carefree. She's a lawyer first. That is her real life job. But when she wants to let loose and not worry about that and be a little more free, she wants to be able to embrace that She-Hulk persona now. That is something new that she is accepting in herself. Two-thirds of the way through the season, and she's now accepting the She-Hulk a little more. So it's fun that she's making that shift.
And they keep teasing about her wearing her superhero costume as well and not actually showing it to
Yeah,
us. So
that's
it's got
true.
to come at some point.
Yep, her assistant said what all of us are thinking, that we want to see the new suit, but we'll
Not to
see
say that the
eventually.
dress wasn't nice or anything. It was a nice dress, but
Yeah. Mhm.
super suit supersedes regular suit.
There we go.
But let's talk about a character who showed up and was actually prominently featured in this episode, and it seemed like the maybe the most random cameo, or not really cameo because it didn't show up in anything else previously, but like randomest character to add to the show, and that is Mr.
Yeah,
Immortal.
yeah, yeah. That was certainly an interesting addition and kind of fun. The implications of it, though, I'm curious. Like, are they ever going to reveal any of his backstory? Are we just supposed to be like, okay, there are new people showing up with superpowers. They have no backstory that they're telling us. Is this setting up that the world is just, people are just starting to pop up with powers and that's the intro to mutants a little more? Or are we just supposed to accept that a lot of people are gaining powers, they have their own backstories, we're not diving into all the backstories. Here's another guy.
I mean, I would be honestly the most surprised. I mean, there have been some surprising MCU projects that were like, oh, Guardians of the Galaxy was kind of a risk. That wasn't a well-known one. But if they did Great Lakes Avengers, arguably, actually, I don't even know if it's an argument, the worst Avengers title team of all time.
Yeah,
Mr. Immortal was like the leader of that group, and
yeah.
they were known for being not a good superhero. They're actually at one point sued by the Avengers for using the Avenger name. That
Yeah,
just
they're
shows
probably
how
like
bad they
stop
were.
using it. Like Flat Boy and Big Bertha, and yeah, it was yeah, not the A team of Avengers. It was, he wanted a team, put out an ad, and he took whoever he could get.
I actually really enjoyed those comics. They were kind of fun and silly, but they actually had some really interesting themes to them too, especially around like Mr. Immortal. I mean, it kind of explores there are other characters who are basically immortal. I mean, you have like Wolverine who can basically not die, and
Yeah,
Deadpool, and they have all these kind of fun things, but like his was like a weird existential one. So I don't know if they're gonna
yeah,
pull that in anywhere, but
yeah.
he seemed a
His
lot more laissez-faire in this one.
yeah, his backstory. It's not really as much a superpower, and I am fairly certain they're not going with the backstory of the comics for his backstory here, but if I recall correctly, his backstory is that he kind of became friends with like a death character with like I don't remember the name of it, but it was a being that comes to fetch people when they die and bring them on. And he became friends with them and became like a son to that being. And so that being is just like, yeah, you can never die now. I'm just never bringing you to death. You're just, and so now he just can't die.
But
It's,
it's also kind of a weight on his shoulders because at least in the comics, there are times when he's like, I don't want to be alive forever.
right.
But that's not the point of this show. That I don't. This is just a fun thing. Like it's one of those characters you could throw into one of these shows as like a one-off. It wouldn't matter. So who knows if they're going to do anything with him? Very likely not, just because of how obscure he kind of is.
Yeah. We're probably just about done with him.
Yeah.
If he shows up again, it'll be in some side thing, some role needed, but I don't know. Maybe She-Hulk is going to accidentally form a West Coast Avengers type of thing with some of her clients. Who knows?
I can see She-Hulk being West Coast Avengers, but not Great Lakes Avengers. They were a little extra.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. West Coast Avengers were still very good.
Yeah. But I mean, like a parody Avengers kind of spin-off thing, just temporarily for the show.
Or like what they did after the first Avengers movie, where they started having those like webisodes. You can see like webisodes of this, but let's move on to make sure we have enough time to talk about everything else.
Yes.
I really liked, well, this is part of it, Mr. Immortal, but not specifically about him. I thought it was really funny when he was talking about how bad he is to his wives and faking his deaths to get out of the situations.
He's a good guy.
Yeah. I like the lawyers aren't supposed to judge you. It's like, no, they just represent you.
Yeah. Yeah, they have to represent you. They don't have to like what you're doing.
Yeah. I thought that was kind of funny, but I feel like they did a good job this episode with the humor. I enjoyed a lot more of the humor this time.
Me too. 100% agree.
And it showed the assistant kind of like stepped in and helped mediate where, because it was kind of unreasonable for like everything. Like it seems like superhuman affairs. They're going to be just so random that creativity matters more than the law in this, it seems.
Yeah.
They settled out of court on this one, so it didn't go anywhere.
And it was nice. It was nice having some of that in there too, because the majority of cases don't go to court. So it's kind of nice to see the discussion in the background, and like that's a real thing that has to be done. And yeah, it was really nice to be able to see kind of that side of it, that back and forth. A superhero and a bunch of people who are victims of this superhero and trying to negotiate what does this mean, because we don't have this in the law books. Yeah, I liked it.
And we got to see a lot more of Mallory book as well, which is great. I'm glad that she's getting a lot more screen time because she is going to be an interesting foil in some ways to the lawyer side of Jen. Probably moving forward, I imagine she'll be a series regular and come back in later seasons as well.
Yeah, it really depends on the direction they go with her character. If they decide to have her in some way tied in with this season's bad guy, then she's probably not going to be back in later seasons. But if she is just there to have another character and like you said, have that foil to Jen, and that is her primary role, then yeah, she should definitely be there. And I'm loving the character. I think the actress is doing a great job with that character. So keeping that in there, a character that like she clearly likes having fun, but at the same time wants to be taken seriously at all times. So wants to have fun, but also wants to make sure it's clear that I'm a serious person. Yeah.
So you said about potentially her being tied into the main bad or not. There's definitely a scene that kind of hints towards that a little bit more. So they're told about the intelligentsia, which I'll get more into that group in a second. But they're looking at the intelligentsia site and it's all kind of hateful and like even death threats and everything like that towards She-Hulk of how do you kill She-Hulk or all these other things that are terrible. And like, honestly, if it was the real world would be insanely bad. And we know that those unfortunately do exist out there as well. But Mallory says, "Don't tell Jen."
Mm.
She's like, "It's only gonna get to her head and make her like." It feeds into their like once they get in her head, they've won kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas her friend wanted to actually tell her and did let the voicemail for her um, regarding that, being like, "Hey, there are people out to get you," which she already knows from the mugging.
Yeah.
Um, but the way that Mallory reacted there, like it could just be them trying to set up the false, the red herring. That's what it's called, the red herring of being like, "Oh, Mallory seems a little sketch, but she's not yet." Um, but what's interesting, Intelligentsia is in the comics. They are a group of super smart super villains who basically share information about superheroes.
Mm.
One notable member, which we've discussed in previous weeks. So if you haven't seen our discussions from previous weeks, last week especially, we talk more about a character called Leader.
Mm-hmm.
The Leader, he is a notable member of the Intelligentsia. So we
Yes.
get this is going to be end up being the Mephisto of this show, where
Yes.
everyone's like, "Oh, it keeps pointing towards this character," and
I'm
then
a hundred
never
percent
shows
bought
up.
in. In my mind, he is the big bad. Even if the show reveals someone else, and be like, no, 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 no. He was in the background. We just all missed it. He's in here somewhere.
I mean, we had the announcement that he's going to be in a future movie, so we know
Yes.
he's already the actor's already able to come back to the MCU. We have the
Yep.
collecting of Hulk blood as being a central element of this show, very much what he was after as well. Um, we now have the Intelligentsia that the Leader is a part of, as well as there's other characters. MODOK, I think, was one of them, and they announced like they have talked about MODOK showing up in the MCU in the future as well. So that's always a possibility. Especially MODOK is a little sillier, so
Yeah.
like you could see that kind of fitting in with this show a little bit more. But I'm still on the Leader
Yeah.
bandwagon here.
Yeah. Definitely. It's interesting. Yeah.
Never know. And then we also got more Titania.
We did.
That's good.
She got
She was
beaten
all
by
over
her
the
heels.
ads, so
Yeah. Yeah. I liked seeing a little more of that rivalry relationship build. That to Titania, She Hulk is a her that people seem that, but like a step better. So like her whole thing is that she's an influencer and she wants to be liked by everyone and she's super strong. Well, She Hulk is influencing people because she's just showing up everywhere. She's also super strong and people are flocking to her. They are tending to like her. So she's kind of becoming everything Titania wants, and Titania is really taking that personally. So
yeah.
seeing that building up in her and her trying to make this a fight, trying to make this a conflict between the two of them, saying, "Look, you're my rival. I want to be yours as well. Let's do this." And then unfortunately, she falls and hurts herself, and her makeup. It's really tough to look good while in an active fist fight where you're getting hit in the face. Uh, I think she should have known that, but yeah.
I will say, it almost is reminiscent of, and this maybe still happens, but the sometimes fake-ish like influencer feuds that would happen on YouTube to get more
Yeah.
views, where it's like you basically fake a feud between two popular YouTubers so that you get more views for each other.
Do you want to see how the feud's going to go? Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like
Yeah.
she's using it for that, but she also wants to come out on top so that she can show that she's better and get more views and everything like that, except she keeps losing. And
Yeah.
the theory that we've talked about previously, with maybe Titania keeps on losing, keeps on having problems, and so she's the one who's able to even take Hulk blood to get even more more strong in the future to have a bigger fight with her. I still see that as a very big possibility.
Yeah. Me too. I do feel for Titania. Like, she's annoying and she's clearly the villain, but I also feel bad for her because, like, I don't feel like she's evil. I don't feel like she's out to try and hurt people. I feel like she just doesn't have any self control at all and is incredibly self centered.
She does
So,
sell snake oil. literal snake oil
Oh, that is true. That is true. She
as
sells
beauty
literal
and
snake
health
oil.
stuff. So
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not convinced that she's a bad person to the extent where she's irredeemable.
oh, she's no like um Baron Zemo blowing up the UN. Like
Yeah.
that's not her.
Yeah.
So it's very different level.
Yeah. We'll see where
uh,
that character goes.
Now, there's different times people like to talk about in the MCU of like unrealistic things. And this show has plenty of unrealistic. We talk about the court scenes being definitely not based in law. But I saw something in this episode. So it was super unrealistic. She
Oh,
had a bunch of money on her. That's not what you were thinking. She had
no, no.
cash. She had like
Oh, yeah.
$50 in fives and ones, exact change for the cash bar every single time. That is unrealistic. I don't care if she's a lawyer. She does
Yeah.
not have exact cash like that.
No one carries that many small bills
No,
on their person. Yeah,
no.
especially wearing dresses. Like, where was she keeping it? Yeah, no, I agree with that. That wasn't what I was thinking. The part that I saw, I was like, ooh, yeah, that's not realistic. She's throwing up as Jen Walters. Titania punches her in the face hard enough to have her soar across that place. And she just looks like, what'd you do that for? Like, completely uninjured.
Yeah,
Like, she's Jen
uppercut cut
Walters.
to the face.
Yeah. If it's strong enough to knock you that far back, broken nose would be the very least of your problems. Like, there should have been shattered bones all over the place. I know they don't want to get too gruesome or anything, and they didn't want this to be like, clearly they intended for her to win the fight, and they weren't ready for her to transform yet.
Yeah.
But still, that was quite the hit, and yeah, that was the part that I saw was unrealistic. But I was willing to get by that because, honestly, it happens in Marvel all the time.
The number of people that Captain America like kicks in the chest and they go flying,
Yeah,
but we don't like we're like, oh, they're probably fine.
yeah, he's fine. He's just sleeping. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Now there's a character that we got introduced to this episode. Shares your name.
Yeah.
A character Josh. So here's the thing about show making. I'm not in the showbiz. I don't know anything about creating a TV show, a movie, but I do know a little bit about story writing and plot development and the previously ons and how that foreshadows things in episodes. The previously on showed Thunderball. Showed a scene with Thunderball talking about getting her blood. So then as soon as the Josh character shows up and is super nice to her and everything like that, I'm like, well, Thunderball had a mask on. That's Thunderball. As soon as he showed up. Not like saying that, like, go me, I figured it out. No, it was like, to me, like, I just felt like it seemed so obvious because of that previously on. And of course, it was essentially confirmed on the very last scene with them saying phase one, with getting that syringe ready is complete, proceed to step two. Kind of unfortunate that finally someone seems to like Jen for Jen and She-Hulk, but it's all fake.
Yeah, I agree. The plot that we had in mind previously about the last guy, the one that She-Hulk connected with, but then Jen didn't, where we theorized that, okay, no, he was just with Jen in order to try and get the blood. I still feel like that strategy is in play. And now we got this new character, Josh, that yeah, I agree. I don't trust him. He went directly to her and was just going for, and he seemed nice and she was receptive. So there's nothing wrong with it. But yeah, it felt too targeted. It felt too quick. And also, there have been a lot of hints that Daredevil will be on later, and that there'll be a connection between Daredevil and She-Hulk. Well, that can't happen if Josh is around. So I don't know. I definitely think that Josh,
like a romantic connection.
Yeah, that was the impression I got, that there was a romantic connection, that there'd be some sort of a romantic connection between Daredevil and She-Hulk. I don't know. Maybe that's not true. We'll see.
Hard to see that happening in my side, but I mean, we got a couple more episodes to go. It's going to be one of them.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I'm not trusting him. Maybe it's the fact that we've been told so often in the show, don't trust men, and I'm taking it to heart, and I just don't trust this guy.
He seems very nice. I don't think he's good. This could just be another misdirect because we don't actually see him sending any messages or anything like that. They could even be just talking about setting up like wave one or step one is done with Abomination. He's now at his 8 wives are all got him to his compound that he's going to be living on. He's human with his inhibitor on. Phase 1 is done. Let's move to phase 2. It could be a complete risk direct, or she suspects him of it, and then that breaks that relationship up because, like, you never know. They could go anyway, but it really, I think Josh is Thunderball, because why else would they have re-said Thunderball's name in the previously on, and then only one new character really?
Yeah, I agree. You definitely have to watch the previously on. They don't put scenes in there unless it'll be important that episode. There's nothing else really in that episode, except for that tiny little scene at the very end. But other than that, there really wasn't anything else in that episode that hinted back to them trying to get her blood. So I agree.
Yep. Just very, very suspicious.
Yeah.
Being a nice guy is suspicious in the MCU, or being a nice person, really. Anyone who's overly nice to the protagonist, you're like, ulterior motives.
Yep. Always. If they're not related and they're not an already introduced character, like hero, yeah.
Or someone that was announced to be a part of it as a character we know. Like when Falcon was introduced, overly nice, but we knew he was Falcon before we even watched the movie.
Right.
Like, we knew what was happening. There wasn't like a surprise, he's Falcon. So there was no distrust there. But yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing is, like, as soon as we saw that syringe, like as soon as we saw like a scientist doctor kind of thing, I was like, are they going to show the leader? Are they going to show leader?
Oh.
Is he here? Every time I see scientist stuff, I'm going to think that until we actually see him. Granted, there's a lot of villains that do stuff in scientists, like in labs.
Yeah.
But
and I do have to say that scientist who the camera was following, but it wouldn't show his face, had blue gloves on. Leader was Mr. Blue in the Incredible Hulk. I mean, I know gloves like that are often blue, but they can also be green. There are other colors, and they chose blue. They chose to focus on his blue hands.
Or this is confirmation that Serenity is
yeah, it's in the MCU now. Just 2 by 2 hands of blue. There were 2 scientists in that.
Two scientists, hands of blue. That direct connection to a show that has been only one season off air for well over a decade, but everyone wants to come back. Maybe the MCU brings it back. No, confirmed here. No,
yeah, heard it here first, folks.
I mean, we do know that Nathan Fillion at one point played, and it was in posters as Wonder Man. Yeah. And that was talked about that they're going to make a Wonder Man show.
Yeah.
But I don't think Nathan was cast as that yet.
Have they cast anyone for that role?
I don't know if they've announced anything.
Okay.
But as soon as they said about it happening, he made a comment online.
Okay.
Made it sound like he wasn't. But
gotcha.
Pretty much everyone in the MCU has to sign these contracts saying that they aren't going to talk about things, and then some do.
I will deny my involvement 73 times before the movie comes out. Yeah. Yeah, that scene at the end with the scientists walking around they clearly had some things set up in there. My thought process, my prediction at this point is that, I mean, we know they're trying to get Jen's blood. But why specifically Jen's blood? Like, as you said, we have Abominations out in the wild or whatever, and he's wearing his inhibitor at all times. So his blood would be a lot easier to get, and he's a Hulk. We have Bruce Banner, who now sometimes has been wearing an inhibitor for a while in order to let his arm heal. So he would have been easier to get blood from, and he's a Hulk. So why Jen? Why are they specifically going after her? So my thought is Jen is what the leader's been waiting for all this time. That maybe he does have some of Bruce's blood, because maybe he managed to get a vial before he made it out of that burning building, or however he escaped. There was a lot of it in there. Some of it could have survived. He could have gotten some from the abomination. The thing is that what those two did not have that Jen does, they both had so much difficulty getting control over the character. Jen, they talk about it in the first episode, that her blood is different and it synthesizes it better. It is just better suited for that gamma radiation, that Hulk blood.
Right.
So her having such great control over it is something that the other two didn't have. And that control, that perfect combination of her having the right blood to accept it and then getting contaminated with it, that could have been the link that Leader was looking for to stabilize his own condition when he was getting blood in him. So we have our villain, the leader. We have that. This is my theory as to why, as what his motives would be in this situation.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, I really hope they show a big bad by the last episode.
Yeah.
Even if it's like an after credits of the last episode, which again, we had 4 episodes of after credits or mid credits, and the last 2 we've had none.
Yeah. I don't know how they're deciding when to do and when not to. I don't know. Maybe they were recording the first 4 and they had ideas, and they just didn't have any ideas for these 2. I don't know. I don't know how they're deciding them. But we're watching though. I'm watching through the credits, waiting to see.
And you get to see. I mean, the credits are great. The sketches that are on there are always funny and creative, and kind of tells a continuation of stories. So like, we got to see Titania getting her veneers fixed on her teeth. We got to see one thing that was kind of weird. The friend that was getting married, the bride, was in a photo booth kissing the DJ, who the DJ is She-Hulk's cousin, Ched, cousin Ched, that we've got introduced to previously. I'm like, I don't know why that's there. It's weird. But they're just kind of like random little things that they throw into those credits.
Yeah. Worth seeing. Credits are always worth seeing.
Definitely.
So, yeah.
But I think, let me double check my notes. I think that is everything I have down.
So I just have one more comment I wanted to make.
Yeah.
So we had in the discussion between Mallory Book and I'm forgetting the assistant's name, but and Jen's assistant. Oh, I feel so bad for forgetting her name. But where they're interacting and they're getting to know each other, and Mallory Book mentioned that she's been married for 10 years and that she has a child. I'm really hoping that never comes up again. Like, I love that it's backstory for Mallory Book. But I know a lot of times in movies and TV shows, one thing that they'll do is they bring up a significant other or someone they're dating or something like that. They bring up another person to foreshadow them coming later. I want Mallory Book to just have a backstory, and for her just to be her backstory, and not to be setting up that she has some relationship with the big bad or something like that. Like, we know she's married, but she's also an awesome character in and of herself. So I don't want her to just be the gateway to someone more significant. It worried me a little bit when she brought that up, that they might be going that route. But I really hope that it is not.
Yeah, it's possible. It also is just possible that they're saying that they don't know anything about her.
Yeah.
You never know with this show.
She keeps to herself so much that even the people at work didn't even know she was married and had kids.
And I believe the assistant is Nikki.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Nikki.
But yeah, I really like Mallory, Nikki. Again, I think I said this in a previous episode. I like all the characters themselves. Yeah. I just felt like the plot wasn't really going where I thought, or was just too hokey.
The direction of the show felt like a timeline that got messed up by Loki. It just was branching in every direction. And you're just like, all right, which way are we supposed to be following this?
Theory video to come up.
Yeah.
Is this timeline going to lead to He Who Remains and would have been pruned? No.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like all the characters, and I liked this episode. So I mean, let's get into our final thoughts then.
Sure.
How'd you feel?
Yeah. This was definitely my favorite episode thus far. I like that Marvel is trying new things. But for me, this wasn't working as much in the earlier episodes, just for me personally. But this episode, I felt like we were on track with a story, with a cohesive story. We had Mr. Immortal, and his storyline felt like it fit in because it was showing the relationship building between Nikki and Mallory. We saw the wedding was there, and we felt like it fit in because it furthered that conflict between Jen and Titania. I felt like everything that happened in this episode made sense to happen in this episode, was well done, progressed the story, and I really enjoyed it. And like you said earlier, I liked the humor so much better in this episode. I feel like the jokes that they were making, they struck home with me this week. So overall, this was definitely my favorite episode, and hopefully this is a sign of things to come for the last three. What did you think?
I agree. I think this is the best episode. I mean, it's a culmination of a lot of things, but actually starting to the storytelling. They're really continuing with that side of it, of like really, yeah, you said it right, progressing all the stories for each of the characters. We have the direction for like coming to terms with the fact that she's She-Hulk and really embracing that. There was a good amount of comedy. I think that the comedy worked. We had, and what was I think was funny is every other episode they kind of just get right into it and things start happening. She-Hulk like introduces this episode as if it's a throwaway episode. She's like, "Oh yeah, this episode is just She-Hulk goes to a wedding." And it was like almost felt like throw it away. This episode, like, and then it ended up being maybe the most important episode where it's furthering everything all in one episode.
Right.
It threw me for a loop that thinking back on it about how that was how she introduced it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my favorite episode so far. I'm excited to see where it goes, what all happens with all the characters. Titania is definitely getting more and more upset about the relationship. She-Hulk starting to love both sides of herself. We possibly have Josh coming in as the one of the villains, potentially get her blood and show that conflict there. So progressed with like the blood gathering. We progressed with She-Hulk coming to terms. We progressed with Titania. We even progressed with Mallory and learning more about her, if she's going to be important for the greater story as well. So everything progressed. So I really, really enjoyed this one.
Yeah. Me too.
Well, that's it for our discussion. Let us know what you felt about this show. Do you think MODOK is coming into it, or Leader is going to be the big bad? Is everything pointing towards Leader and we missed something else that's pointing towards Leader that you're like, oh no, they've already announced he's a cast? No. Let us know down below in the comments section. And of course, like, subscribe, hit that bell notification for notifications. And we do this every week, especially every Marvel show, but we do discussion videos on Disney Plus shows that come out. We'll do a discussion video, try to get it out the very next day or so. And we'll be back again next week to discuss this further. We also have Monday episodes for our theory videos. Thanks
for watching.
For watching.